So our thought in making that sort of a centerpiece of tonight's program was to point out that so often it feels that that the work before us, the work of trying to make some modicum of justice of hundreds of years of atrocities and genocide, both physical and cultural, that it seems impossible and that we can't possibly begin. But this massive crowd on the stage makes it clear that it's already happening here in central New York. And in fact, if, as we plan to do this coming year, we're able to spread that understanding and that collaboration around New York State, we will indeed stop hydrofracking in this state and begin building a sustainable future. So I'd like to introduce Jake Edwards, someone who through this campaign I've come to call my friend, someone who's an eloquent speaker who speaks from his heart as well as based on deep personal and historical understanding based on the long-standing Haudenosaunee oral tradition. So he's going to come and speak about the treaties and share replicas of the wampum belts to help us guide and follow that complicated history. So, Jake Edwards.
Nyawa skanu swagwegi. The guy na gunkade na wendade. Can do quio nanga ogasa. Again, with watunda na gano hanyu na o na gwegi ne hadio ne tona ne ganu sagunwa. And again, oh, maybe I better use English. Spilling things up here. You guys got me nervous. Some of you know what you're about to hear again as a reminder is how we put it out there as our oral teachings. It's constantly spoken so that we all know and it sinks well into our bodies, into our hearts, into our minds. We also know you're in Haudenosaunee territory. Kanakdagwenioke Nanga is the capital of the Haudenosaunee, sometimes referred to us by the French as Iroquois, 5 nations, 6 nations. We are the Haudenosaunee. Onondaga here is the capital, Kanakdagwenioke, fire keepers of the Confederacy of the 5 nations and now the 6. There was a time at the beginning. Well, I want to condense this a bit because what we teach and what we know and pass on generation to generation is kindness that going at the great law of peace. Sometimes that can take 8 to 10 days to interpret it. We're going to condense it somewhat since Tadadaho already set precedents of cutting things short. So I'm going to follow that. And we'll cut it short time frame wise because we don't see us all sitting here for 8 to 10 days. And so it'll be a condensed version of the great law of peace. Prior to receiving the message from the peacemaker, from the Creator, through to the peacemaker for all of us. Prior to that, we were traveling about the forest, which we call our home here. We were battling each other. We were at war with each other. We were doing it constantly. And we were good at it. So we continued on with the thought that we were entertaining the Creator because that's what we were doing so well. And so we received this message. Creator was saddened by our actions to each other, toward each other, throughout the day and throughout the night. And so he sent a message through the peacemaker. And so the message came, and it took a long time for our people to accept it. It traveled about different communities. We did accept the message, a message of unity and strength. Skada hendwaya ngwatni guha. Gano hanyo. Agwegi watem wahena don't hatuna wenjage. We all come of one mind and give thanks for what was put here on earth for us. That's part of the Thanksgiving address that was translation cut short. It's all in there. And so we sat and we met and we discussed and we went through and through. Starting off with the Thanksgiving address which we had, we were reminded to carry it on. The unity of the 5 nations, starting from the east, it's the Mohawks, and coming in the Oneidas, the Onondagas, Ganactagwenioke, fire keepers of the Haudenosaunee, the Cayugas, and the keepers of the Western Door, the Senecas. We unite as one, and our decisions to do so strengthened the message that the peacemaker brings. It strengthens it in our hearts as we have now one mind, one heart, one body. Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse. And so that's who we are. Some of you recognize this, most of you probably do who are here, as our flag. Well, our flag hasn't been around for too long. It came about from one of the things that we cherish as a replacement to the war and bloodshed that we caused to each other prior to the great law of peace was happening. After that, we joined as one. We came to the understanding that to entertain the Creator, our young men, we don't fight each other. We buried our weapons of war under the great tree of peace. And so we entertained the Creator with a game of lacrosse. Very spiritual game, very powerful. The young men exercised their strengths through the game of lacrosse. And so how we notice unity, this unity belt, Hiawatha belt, Confederacy belt, that's got several names it goes by also. We also now recognize the Haudenosaunee flag, which came about as our young men were overseas playing international competition, the game of lacrosse. And as the people were there from all different parts of the world, had all their flags up, all around. And they came to the Haudenosaunee and asked, "Where's your flag?" And our people looked at each other and said, "Well, we don't have a flag. We know who we are." So, well, yeah, that's good. That's good that you know who you are. This is what those people were telling us. And so we took it as a serious note, and our people put their minds together, coming up with different ideas, all good ideas. And so somebody spoke up and says, "Well, here's our belt. This is our recognition. When we meet other nations, prior to the white man coming here, this is what we explain to them. Because the white roots of peace, after the tree was planted, it expands in all directions, and anybody's welcome to follow them roots and take shelter under the laws, the great law of peace." And so that's how our belt became our flag was through international recognition of who we are for those of them over there that didn't know. And so as it goes on, this great law of peace, there's a lot in there. Each and every row, each and every bead has an explanation to it. Protocols, procedures, ceremony, raising chiefs, taking chiefs down. It's all in there. That's a responsibility of the women folk, clan mothers. They have a great responsibility. And also in the Ganohanyo, the Thanksgiving address that Taradaho had put out for all our ears, some of the translation in there is the important role of our grandmother moon, who controls the currents of the waters. All currents and all waters is under responsibility. We acknowledge that. And we kindly and respectfully put our minds together as one and give a thanksgiving to our grandmother moon, who's still carrying on her duties, to make sure that the waters remain here pure and fresh, pristine for the next generations to come. And also the decision-making process that the Council of Chiefs is summoned to carry on. And in that, their decisions are to be made Hadigum sadundies, scano, so that the face is yet to come, yet to appear from the earth, will have what we have. It's our responsibility to not destroy anything that we have to walk around here on earth with, anything that is provided for us for. It's our responsibilities to make our decisions today, each and every one of us, so that no harm will come to what we're thankful for, so that future generations will have that to see and enjoy themselves. And so in translating to English, in the first place, cuts a lot short, cuts a lot of this out. And then to condense it too, does it again. But this is what we should be thankful for each and every day, the oneganos. And so as we travel about through the Haudenosaunee, which is our roots are expanded out, and we do have a lot of people, a lot of nations coming and joining and seeking shelter under the great law of peace. And so we come across this time that we noticed our woods has company in it, people we didn't understand who they are, and so runners will greet them. It was the Mohawk Nation that came and brought it to the attention of the Haudenosaunee that something has to be acknowledged here to the east. These people are here and they don't seem to be leaving. And so we had agreements with them. We had working agreements with them at that time. And the Mohawks brought it into some of the translations of it. Is referencing peace, friendship, and forever. That we notice that these people they're not going home. And so we have to have an agreement. And so we come up with an agreement. One that wasn't new at the time. It was new to them. It was new to the Dutch. So we come up with the agreement of the two-row wampum. And in the two-row wampum, it stated, all the teachings that we shared from the great law of peace, we shared with these newcomers to the forest. And so in doing so, we also told them to be respectful of all and only take from Mother Earth is what you need to survive. And so this agreement came about. And what the two-row represents is the Haudenosaunee people, Onkwehoe, in their canoe, traveling down the river of life alongside the newcomers in their vessel, their ship. And in the canoe has all our ways, our cultures, our songs, our dances, what belongs to us. And then the boat has the same for them. All their ways, their religions, their cultures, their clothes, their all. And the agreement was that we could live side by side, traveling down the river of life, not to cross paths with each other, not to interfere with each other's ways, cultures, songs, ceremonies, and not to pass laws on to each other, but yet travel side by each down the river of life and enjoy the bounties Mother Earth provides for us, as what was stated in the great law, peace. And so this agreement was a trade agreement, was peace, friendship, forever. And we talked about that. And you got to put your mind back at this time of, we're talking today about cutting short the message of the great law of peace and the agreements in the two-row wampum, and we're using English. So back in 1613, they were using our own Hodinoshoni Ungwawana, our own words, and then having to go through translators as we're teaching to translate. We're trying to learn English and teach our language at the same time as agreeing with something. But it did happen. And it's acknowledged that way as the covenant chain of peace. And so this was to last for as long as the sun shines from the east, sets in the west, as long as the rivers flow downhill, and for as long as the grass grows green. Peace, friendship, and forever. Understanding the laws that it's in our house. The forest is our house. And we share it. We share it with the newcomers. So as time goes on, shortly after this agreement, these agreements have been violated, been broken. And we work continuously to remind our brothers of these agreements and that we're living side by side, traveling the river of life, not to interfere with each other's business. It was a tough job, it still is, for the leaders, having to remind. So there was a time after this agreement was made that the settlements of the newcomers across the east were struggling amongst themselves, disagreeing rapidly. And they come to Onondaga, come to Haudenosaunee territory and seek help. They're a hungry people. They're looking for advice. Some of their leaders are well-known names today. It's in the 1700s now. And so we shared with them our teachings. They know of them from earlier times. They know of these teachings. They want to know how to put them to work. And so we share with them. We remind them of the covenant chain of friendship. The covenant chain comes from a term when the ship landed and the Mohawks greeted them, shared with them some of their teachings, shared with them their food, shared with them their laws, their ways. So the term starts off at that beginnings with that they'll anchor their boat to the woods. And then once we realized that they weren't going along and the message come in further, they said that perhaps we should anchor that boat to the rock, which is to unite us, the people of the standing stone. And so they did. And then they said further that we should go and anchor to the hills. And what that translates to is bringing it to Onondaga, that these people aren't going away and they're going to be anchored here. And so that covenant chain was brought up, that rope may rot, and they'll make a chain of steel. And our people told them that chain may rust, fall apart. And they suggested silver. Silver don't rust, and silver is easily polished. So sometimes today you hear that term, we're polishing the covenant chain of friendship. And that's what it is. Each time that we sit and meet and greet each other as governments, as people, we're polishing the covenant chain of friendship, because this is still forever. And so these people that came again now, a few years later, asking for advice on governance. And so we shared with them again the great law of peace, the structure, the protocols, and most of all, Ganohanyo. And so it was translated to them, the long version, and it represents all living things, all things that are here for us. And that skada hendwayang guatnigu ha, with the etino ha, agwegi wadawa haina da ha, netsungwaya disai. We all come of one mind and we give thanks, a great thanksgiving. And so cutting that Thanksgiving translation short, it actually really does leave a lot out. And just a small term of we kindly and respectfully put our minds together as one and give thanks. The responsibilities of Mother Earth are still carrying on to provide for us. These are spoken regularly at whether we're in ceremony, whether we're in meeting, Grand Council meeting, Chiefs meeting, community, clan meeting. Ganohanyo is spoken. Some of you may have noticed the acknowledgement that the men would put out in agreement of Skada Handwai. Skada means one. And so in this great law of peace, it's explained to our people by the peacemaker that you have a fire to protect as an individual, and it's your heart. We all know what happens when your heart goes out. We all know that. So it's our job to protect it. Eating well and all sorts of good things. Well, each nation has a fire too. Each council has a fire. It's the leader's job to protect it. Talk about the great law, the great tree of peace, that it's told that somebody may come and try to hack at the roots to make that tree come down. The chiefs are standing around it, locked arms. They won't let it fall. They won't let it hit the ground. They stand it back up with the support of our clan mothers standing right there, holding us up, supporting that great law of peace. Many times throughout the thousand or so years that it's been presented to us by the peacemaker has been hacked at. And so peacemaker explained to us that your method of food source and your method of defense is an arrow. So you use an arrow representing one from each nation. So we had the arrows laid out here, and he takes one arrow, puts it up like this, and shows you that any man can snap that arrow, can break it. He says, now you take 5 arrows and you bundle it together with all that was given to you to survive here on earth and be at peace and contentment amongst yourself. The great law of peace, the love, the caring, the passion, the thanksgiving, protocols, your ways. In the Ganohanya, we also talk about the leaders that we have. The berries have a leader. Medicines have a leader. Animals in the forest have a leader, and that animal is the deer. And the birds have a leader, is the eagle. So the eagle was perched on top of the great tree of peace. And he's going to screech when there's trouble coming. Anything that may affect the health of the great law of peace, which is now all of us are under. And so the eagle's been screeching for quite a while now, and it's up to us to carry it on, to carry on this peace and contentment. And so we shared this with the people that were coming to our confederacy, the Haudenosaunee, looking for governance help. We shared with them the great law of peace. And once that bundles are wrapped, them 5 bundles are wrapped with the sinew of the leader of the forest and all that's in the unity of our people, no man can break that bundle. No man can break that bundle, because we still carry on the Ganohanya. By the daytime and by the nighttime, we still carry on the love and caring for the people. It's still going on. And there's people trying to attack that from way back. Unity of the people silences them. So we shared this with these people. Today, you look in your history books and you'll recognize these people as the 13 colonies. But if you look deeper in your history book, you'll see them recognizing themselves as the 13 councils of fire. And you also look at the symbolism in your archives, which they don't teach you in the social studies classes. These people, these 13 councils of fire, these are white people taking up the ways of the great law of peace. And so you'll also notice in the archives, which is not in the history books, is that the recognition of the turkey was their national symbol because it fed them well. And they changed it after hearing the great law of peace to the eagle. And today you see that behind the president, behind the judges. You see that eagle, and in his grasp, in his clasp, in his talons, you see 13 arrows taken from the great law of peace. It's bound together. And in the other clasp, he has an olive leaf, which overseas, I guess, represents peace. The olive branch represents peace, I was told. And so, with this unity that we shared with the 13, today it's known as the 13 colonies. We shared it, and they developed their 13 councils of fire. And they carried that on. And it wasn't until 1987, just not too long ago, that Congress, the United States Congress, had recognized the contributions to the Constitution of the United States. They recognized the contributions of the great law of peace, contributing to and helping develop the Constitution. Because when this stuff was being shared with them, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, it didn't take just one meeting and they understood it. Because you got to remember, too, there's still translations. It has to go on. And it still has to be translated again when the person writes it down. And so one of these guys that were writing it down, listening to the translator, was Benjamin Franklin. And in his notes, he saw these, well, I guess a bunch of lights kept going off in his thoughts as he was listening and writing. And he's one of the contributors to the Constitution. And so as we go along, we talk about the treaties, the agreements, the two-row wampum. We're still sharing our knowledge. There was a long time in between where you guys didn't hear about us. Some of you don't even know that we still exist in a traditional form of government. We accept no federal funds. Treaty obligation, health clinic is what we have. Our government is still run the traditional way. Our chiefs are raised by clan mothers. It's still going on. Ceremonies. When we have our ceremonies, it's not just for us. It's for all the berries, all the foods, all the woods, maple syrup, maple sap. It goes on and on. It's all in here. It's all in the law. It's all in the ways to conduct yourself as you walk about in contentment and at peace throughout Haudenosaunee. And anybody, as far as those roots all go, in all directions, are welcome to seek shelter. And as they do, we don't ask them to change their ways. We ask them to respect the ways of the forest. The ways in our house is what we term the forest. That's where we live. It's our house. It's our home. And so we don't ask anybody to change their ways. Like here, we didn't ask them to change their ways. We asked them to respect our house. And so these people that did learn that, 13 colonies, 13 councils of fire, you guys all recognize the arrows. You see it in the eagle's clasp, what they've borrowed, they use. Well, it come a time where there's been a lot of disagreements and there's been a lot of broken agreements. There's a lot that happened. Twisted and cruel history has happened to our people. George Washington became a president of the United States. He understood the value of our house. He understood the value of our home. He also understood there was land that he wanted for his people. So all around us, on the back sides of us, there's wars going on because of the encroachments and the violations and the cruel and twisted ways of some of the people. George Washington summoned us to not have war with him and his people. He's in here somewhere. I got George Washington in the... I got him in a bag. In 1794, George Washington summoned our people to have peace with him and his people. And he hired some of our people to make a belt to show his sincerity. This one here is sometimes called the George Washington Belt. Sometimes it's called the Pickering Belt, because Colonel Pickering was commissioned to conduct the treaty. And it's also known as the Canandaigua Treaty. And that's where the treaty took place amongst the Haudenosaunee of peace. And we agreed to that peace because he answered our concerns. At that treaty, he answered our concerns of stopping the encroachment on our lands. And we won't take up arms with our brothers to the west who are battling you and beating your army. And he knew the strength of the Haudenosaunee. If we joined against him, he knew the consequences of it. So he asked us for peace, and we agreed because he said we'd leave our land to us forever unless we decide to sell it to him. None of our people never decided to do that. But we got encroached upon by his people. And so that was in 1794, November 11th. It was of that same year that they were encroaching on us still, because they didn't have cell phones back then. He couldn't call his people and say, you go back east. And so he acknowledged that some of his people are uncontrollable, cruel and twisted are their thoughts. But we continue to uphold our side of it and not take up arms against him. There's so many other treaties to mention. I bring this one out to your attention. This is one of the first, this is the first treaty, United States of America. But this is the first treaty with the newcomers to our forest. And all the laws and agreements and understandings that's in the great law of peace were put into this understanding. And so this one here marks the foundation of treaty making with the new government. Now they understand how to treat with Indians. That's what they called us. They thought they were in India. We always maintain who we are, and our oral teachings allow us to do so. We carry it on. And like I started saying now, that some of you that don't know who we are, didn't understand us living next door as neighbors, it was because there was a time in our teachings, because we were taught by you guys when it comes to schooling. In order to get through life, you have to have an education that is prescribed to us. I don't know if you guys know statistics or anything like that, but Native Americans have a high dropout rate because we get and stick to our oral teachings. We're busy learning our ways. Education is good as long as we don't forget who we are. When we travel anywheres, when we greet anybody, we greet them to who we are. That was all explained in here too, because it talks about how we're dressed, how we will dress, we'll recognize each other. And so this two-row wampum campaign now is coming to its 400 years. 400 years. We're going to paddle down the Hudson River from Albany to Manhattan, side by side, is what the words are spoken in the Treaty of the Two-Row Wampum Goswentut. Prior to that, we're going to paddle from Haudenosaunee over to Albany. Schenectady, that's what we call it. On the other side of the pines, Schenectady. You guys will know it as Schenectady. All our places had names, still have names. Recognizable trees, streams. All of that. That didn't happen when some scholars say that we came together in 1600 or something. Went around naming everything real quick. Some of them scholars, well, you know what I mean. We're talking about peace here tonight, and I talked about the Canandaigua Treaty, which is this one here. We have the original belt that was made in 1794, and we took it to Washington to summon the people of the world to honor or persuade their governments to honor their agreements, the agreements that kept them alive, the agreements that fed them when they were hungry and weak. We reached out. Like I was saying, education came in, we kind of stopped reaching out because we were getting disciplined for telling you this stuff. The teacher will sit you in a corner if you talked about treaties. Tell us we don't know what we're talking about. So we go home and talk to our elders and say that teacher said we don't know what we're talking about. So you talk about the hurt that we receive, the pain. We want to graduate, we got to listen to the teacher. You want to survive, listen to your elders. In this day and age, we have to listen to both because we're never done learning. And so we stepped up sometime in the 70s from Onondaga Council and acknowledged that it's been long enough time had passed that we've been quiet about who we are and who the other side of these agreements are, because the history teachers aren't teaching it, so it's up to us to do it. And so that's what we did. That's what our leaders did, that passed on now. Told us, it's up to you. One of our chiefs had we were young kids. We put our hands out like this. And he came walking by, and he went like this, in the palm of our hands. He said, now what are you going to do? It's now in your hands. It's time to teach and share that. So we got to change the editorial board's decisions to eliminate our teachings in there. We're not going to give you guys all the ceremonies and our stuff like that. We're going to give you what part is your responsibility as the other side of the agreement to carry on for future generations. So we look forward to seeing you guys on this paddle down the Hudson River, and also we look forward to hearing your words and your government leaders about honoring the treaties. Daneto.